This is a Goldwing GL1500. What year is it?
It's the 93.
93. The BlackWing Fork Brace fits all years of the 1500, so this should not be an issue. Bike is on the center stand. And these are all the tools you need. A set of metric wrenches, a set of standard SAE wrenches, and a knife or something with a little tip.
Hex wrenches, by the way.
Yeah, hex wrenches. Okay. And a nice little roller stool. Makes the whole job a lot easier. So we're going to show you how to install the BlackWing Fork Brace. Really simple. So the first thing you need to do is come in on the front here where the cover is. There's two 6mm bolts and they both have covers installed. So you have to get in, and it's kind of tricky, but not too bad. Just kind of pry off the little bolt covers. Those should just pop right off. Then you need a 5mm hex wrench, or Allen wrench, however you wish to. Get that in there and break those loose. They might be kind of tight depending on how long it's been, how old the bike is, but you just get in there and break those open. That's the 6mm bolt, one of them. And the other 6mm bolt. And the cover should just pop right off. And now you need a 6mm wrench for these 7mm bolts. Is you only take off two diagonally opposing bolts first. And you'll see the reason for this shortly. And do not loosen the other two bolts yet. Back those out. Okay, there's the 8mm bolt. And then diagonally take out the other one. Now with the other two bolts still in, this is very important. You take out your parts bag from the brace, from the BlackWing brace, take out your two studs, insert them in the open holes, and thread them in just a little bit.
I just throw it on the ground, but you're done.
There you go.
They don't have to go very far in.
It's
just
it's black, I think.
Yeah.
You want to feel it.
And like I said, it's
thread in and grab.
And you may never want to get another one.
Okay, now you take off the other two bolts. What this does is you're bolting into the fender stay underneath. When you remove these other two bolts, the fender stay is going to drop. And if you don't have those studs in there to hold it, you're going to have to take the whole fender off. Which you don't want to do. And you can feel the fender stay wanting to fall off. It's going to drop here.
I still have the clearance,
Yep, it just dropped, but the other two bolts are out. Before I install a BlackWing brace, I'd like to show you the main differences between my brace and the Super Brace. If you look real close in here, right above the fender, you can see how this is contoured on the casting. When I designed the BlackWing brace, I designed my BlackWing brace to fit that contour of that casting. It's like a tongue and groove. It really gets down in there and completely locks these forks from moving apart from each other. Now in contrast, the Super Brace, of which this is one, his whole contact area on the Super Brace is this radius here, which fits around the outside diameter of the upper portion of the sliders. But if you look real closely on the slider, on the lower portion here, this is relieved as part of the manufacturing process. So in essence, that's about 3/16 of an inch. That 3/16 is completely, there's no contact between that area and the Super Brace. So all you have is just a slight little area on this side, on this radius, where there's any contact between the fork tubes. That's the only contact that prevents movement of the forks. Again, mine is designed to fit this contour on the casting so it fits like a tongue and groove. A lot more contact area, and it sits a little lower, plus it makes it much more rigid, and it fits a lot better. So now we'll go ahead and put the brace over the studs, the 2 studs, fit it down nicely. Now this is going to be just a little snug, but you should not have to force it. If you have to force it, then we have to go to alternative measures. But you see how that just kind of snaps down on there. You know, I have to put a little pressure, but not too much. It just goes in there completely snug. It fits perfectly. That's the way I designed it. And you'll see also, you're going to notice how much lower it sits. If you can see, for instance, right there, that's sitting at least an 1/8 inch higher. This is very important because when the cover bolts back on, if you have a super brace, that 1/8 inch sitting higher is going to keep the cover up. It's going to leave a big 1/8 inch gap above the fender between the cover. The way I designed the BlackWing brace, it sits almost completely flush, no gap. Flathead screws. This is another big difference between the super brace and my BlackWing brace. I use flathead cap screws. If you notice, the flathead is tapered at an 82-degree angle. This essentially acts like a dowel pin. When you bolt through the fender stay, it picks up the countersinks, the 82-degree countersinks on the BlackWing brace, and completely locks that brace for moving it. Whereas the super brace, they just use a counterbored hole with a standard 6-sided hex bolt. Excuse me. There's still room. First of all, there's the clearance in the hole, and then there's nothing constraining the outside of the bolt, so there's still room to twist and move and flex. You got to pull the fender stay up, and you got to get the screw down in there and get it started. And you kind of just bring that in there. I'll cut. Let's see, 5/60. Maybe it's a 1/8. How did I screw that up? Oh, okay. Well, I can cut that. Then you keep it lifted up. You bring it in just till it starts to snug up, till it just a little bit of movement there, but you don't want to tighten it at all yet. And you take your other screw, go in the back corner. Yeah, there's no short circuit around this. You can't do one and then replace all the bolts. You have to do both studs and both bolts. And the same thing, you gotta kind of lift it up, and it's hard to see there. But you just bring the screw in till it just starts to hit and keeps it from sinking back down. Now, you simply remove the 2 studs. Now you can just hand thread these, get them started. Kind of run them in there, it helps, saves a little bit of time. And you run them in until they're, don't tighten them yet, you just run them in until they just get to the top of the brakes. Until you start to get, and it will get a little tight, and that's because the fender stay, the threaded holes run through, which means they're exposed to the underside of the fender, and so these threads are clogged with road debris. So it just gets a little tight in there, but that's okay because it kind of acts like Loctite, and it helps secure the bolts. Okay, once you get it down there, the torque spec for these is about 8 foot-pounds, but most people don't have torque wrenches, so I just kind of, you run them in until you can just feel it start to bottom out on the countersink. And you tighten all 4 screws this way first. You kind of want to alternate, do a torque sequence so it's evenly torqued down. And you go until the screw stops turning and no more. You can feel it when it stops. And you can also see when it kind of sinks down underneath. The screw when it's finished should be just below flush. And when you get all 4 screws, 4 bolts that are just at that point, now what you want to do is go back and you're going to do your final torque. Just a little bit. You know, most of you again aren't going to have a torque wrench, so it's going to be by feel. It's when basically it's when it stops turning, and then just a little bit more. You don't need to gorilla torque these. These are fine threads. If you over torque them, they can strip out. But you can feel when they go in there and take a nice bite. And essentially that's it. You simply put the cover back on. As you can see, you can already see that there's no gap there. That's what it looked like before. Now the 8mm screws you're going to discard or keep them or whatever, they don't go back in. So you take your 5mm wrench. I'll try and get them started first before I wrench it. And then okay, same thing. When you feel it bottom out, then you go do the other one. And you just kind of... Torque spec for a 6mm bolt is 10 foot-pounds. So you just... You don't want to overdo it because you don't want to crack the cover. Because it really is not going to go anywhere. And you take your covers, just stick them back in there and push them in. Put the other cover in. And that's it. The installation of the BlackWing Fork Brace is complete. What you want to do after this is take the bike off the center stand and cycle the front end to make sure there's no, that the forks don't stick. It almost never happens. I don't think it'll happen. Once that's done, you're good to go. Get on the road.